The season's not over yet for the Blue Jackets. The Blue Jackets still have a really good farm system, so the future is very much bright with this organization. And Dylan Tyrer from the Columbus Blue Jackets Radio Network is going to tell you why today on Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Hayden Heilshorn. With me in a second is my co-host, Jacob Foster. We're here to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of your favorite team and ours, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before you go, and thank you for making this your first listen every day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms. We're free right here on YouTube and the SiriusXM app. This episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Last week, we had on Dylan Tyrer from the Columbus Blue Jackets Radio Network. We have more of that conversation with him, this time talking about the future of the Columbus Blue Jackets organization, what they still have left on the table for them this year, and actually what they have in their farm system. Up in Cleveland, some great a spotlight is put on some players that are having a good year so far with the Monsters, and then just some other prospects to look forward to in the future. So all that is here today with Dylan Tyrer as we take it to more of our conversation with Kirill Marchenko. He is a little bit more of a passer this year, be it that he hasn't gotten a goal yet. He's only getting assists. And another guy who we've known for a while prefers to pass than shoot the puck is Johnny Gaudreau. Neither of these guys have scored a goal yet. I know, again, I want to preface this. We are recording before the Habs game, so they might just – one of them might have
both going to score tonight now that you've said
Yeah,
we're
jinxing them into it. That's what's happening.
Which is a good thing. But
fine by me.
It's a good thing. How are these guys contributing in other ways other than just getting assists?
Well, I mean, both of them are going to score at some point. They're both shooting the puck a lot, and they're coming close. Like, I think as far as expected goals go, Marchenko is top 5 on the team. He's in the top third of players in the NHL in expected goals, even though he hasn't actually scored one yet. So that tells you he's generating, right? Like, he's had his opportunities to score. He's hit a couple of posts. I think he obviously wants to score the goal. You can tell that he's maybe pressing a little bit, but it'll come for him. He does so many things well. Like, I talked about all those guys that play that fast, north-south, hard, skilled game earlier. Marchenko's one of those guys. An underrated ability of his is just winning battles. Like, the guy is strong on the puck. He wins lots of battles in the offensive zone. He's good at keeping the puck away from the opponent, and he's got a great shot. And I think more so, something that I've noticed with him, like more so than, you think of Patrick Laine and you think of a hard rocket shot. With Marchenko, I think he's just got a really accurate shot. It's going to come for him. Like, I think he does a lot of things well. And I mean, that's how he's helped the Blue Jackets this year, to answer your question. Like, he hasn't been a plug by any means. Like, because he hasn't scored a goal doesn't mean he's not doing anything. I know that that's his game, is scoring goals, but he does a lot of stuff really, really well. And he helps his teammates. He helps the guys on his line. So they've used him. I asked Pascal Vincent this yesterday, actually, because it was an observation that I had during the last game, that they view Marchenko, Bemstrom, and Roslovic pretty similarly. I think they all have really similar skill sets, and they view them as pretty interchangeable in the lineup depending on who's going. So, like, based out of those three guys, whoever is going the best is going to play on the top line with Johnny Gaudreau, or, whatever line's going. You know what I'm saying? Like, this guy's going to play with Laine, this guy's going to play with Gaudreau, based off of how everybody's playing. Those three guys being everybody. So that's a long way of saying, again, they view those three players as interchangeable based off of who is playing the best, so they can slot them in up and down the lineup. For Marchenko, he's not playing his best right now because he's not scoring. So they're going to, move him around to try and put him into a situation where he feels comfortable and can play his best. So that's what they're doing right now, is just juggling guys in the lineup to see where chemistry works, who works with who, and where everybody is going to be the best versions of themselves. So Marchenko is trying. I don't think he's playing poorly whatsoever. but he hasn't scored yet, and that's his game. So I think that's kind of where your question comes from, right? Like, what's he doing other than scoring goals if he's not scoring goals? But I see him doing a lot of things good, and the goals are going to come. As far as it goes with Johnny, it's pretty similar. He's shooting the puck a ton. Like, when it comes to the Blue Jackets being on the power play, he's over on that left side now because that's where he played his entire career before coming to the Blue Jackets. The Blue Jackets started him out on the half wall playing with Patrik Laine because you think to yourself, well, Johnny Gaudreau is a passer, so he's going to send it through the slot over to Laine, who's going to one-time the puck. Well, Johnny's really comfortable in that same slot that Laine is comfortable in. And that's because he likes to shoot the puck from there. He likes just surveying the ice from there. It opens things up for him when he's able to get his legs moving and come down towards the goalie. That's what he does. He kind of builds up and comes down towards the goalie rather than being on the half wall. You're kind of stuck in that spot moving laterally rather than downhill. So I think the more Johnny just kind of gets comfortable this year, it's going to come for him too. Like, Johnny Gaudreau is not a goal scorer, right? Like that's not what he's known for. Is Johnny going to score 25, 30 goals every season? Has he scored 40 in the league? Yes, he has. Yes, that's the kind of production we've come to expect from Johnny Gaudreau, 25, 30 goals. But he's a playmaker through and through. Again, I think it just comes down to the mix for the Blue Jackets. The guys that are playing with Johnny Gaudreau, they're still trying to figure out kind of that winger to play up top with Johnny Gaudreau and Boone Jenner. I think it's going to be Jack Roslovic in this game against Montreal is going to get that opportunity. So maybe that brings the best out of Johnny Gaudreau. They really liked Marchenko playing with Gaudreau for those similar reasons that I talked about earlier. It'll just take time, right? We're early in the season. Of course, you want to see Johnny score a goal, but it's coming. Like, I feel like he should have had one or two in that game against Anaheim. I think that was one of his better games of the season. So it takes time for everybody, right? Everybody's different. Some guys are just fiending to. This is putting it wrong, but some guys are just ready to go the first game. Not saying that Johnny's not ready to go, but some guys just have it the first game. Some guys take a little bit longer. Maybe this is one of those years for Johnny where he's just trying to figure out the chemistry with the line mates. You know, he played all of last year with Patrik Laine on the power play. They're changing that up for him, but the points are going to come. The goals are going to come for Johnny Gaudreau, and that's because he's Johnny Gaudreau, and that's what he does.
Yeah, for sure. It's very much like, and I do this as well. I know that I'm guilty of this. It's you have to like temper your expectations. I would love Johnny Gaudreau to come out and score, and have 3 points every single game.
Yeah.
And it'll balance out. He's not going to continue shooting at 0%. It's very much it's the 7th game of the season. It's fine. But
yeah. Has Johnny Gaudreau played his best this year? No, he hasn't. But I think he's getting better and better. And Pascal Vincent said the exact same thing, that Johnny he's becoming Johnny again the more and more he plays.
Yeah, definitely. We talked a little bit about Patrik Laine there. I want to talk about him a little bit more because obviously he's had a big change this season in that he's moved to center. Obviously that has kind of pushed Fantilli to the wing for now. How has Patrik Laine playing center kind of helped the team in general? Because I prefer Fantilli at center, but I have really liked what Patrik Laine has done down the middle of the ice this season.
Well, the thing is here, it's kind of an interesting thing going back to Pascal Vincent, because the way that Pascal Vincent has talked about positions with the Blue Jackets is the center takes the faceoff, but as soon as the faceoff's over, positions don't exist. There's 3 forwards. So in terms of like the responsibility or, the defensive responsibility being low in the zone, being high in the zone, it can be any of the 3 forwards. It's just a matter of the given situation on the ice, right? Who is where and when. So it's not that Adam Fantilli wasn't playing center, because he and Laine were splitting the faceoffs depending on the side of the ice that the faceoff was on, pretty much. They want the guy pulling back on his strong side. So if the faceoff is on one side of the ice, Laine is going to take it. The faceoff's on the other side of the ice, Fantilli is going to take it. Outside of that, those guys just have good chemistry. Like it worked early in the preseason, right? And then they kind of got away from those guys playing together, and then they brought them back together. So I think that's why we see that. It's not necessarily that, Laine is taking the center spot from Adam Fantilli. It's that I think the team feels that they can be better with Patrik Laine having the puck more. And Laine feels that he can be better having the puck more. And Pazzy's talked about this a lot too. You know, we think of Patrik Laine as a finisher in the NHL, a guy that's an elite goal scorer. He has a very good playmaking and passing ability. The puck being on his stick allows him to do that more. On the wing, you're not going to be engaged as much. You're not going to have the puck as much. They like him in the middle because he's going to have the puck more just naturally. That's where the puck is on the ice. You know what I'm saying? And they feel that the more he has the puck on his stick, the more he can create, the better this team is going to be. And Patrik, he's a really interesting guy, isn't he? Like you think of Patrik Laine and you're like, this guy seems so flashy. He wants to put up points. He wants to score goals. But, you know, we heard the other day from Pascal Vincent that Patty has told him he doesn't care about that. He just wants to win hockey games, and he feels that he can help the team win games by playing center. And going back to when Pascal Vincent and Patrik Laine were together in Winnipeg, Pascal thought at that point that Patrik Laine might be able to make a good center in the NHL because of his skill set. So now we're seeing it. Again, it's early in the experiment, right? He's played, let's see, he got hurt during that Calgary game. So at that point, it was the Blue Jackets' 4th game of the season. So he's played 6 games at center in the NHL. That's not a whole lot. But it felt like Patrik Laine was getting more and more comfortable as this season went on. The more games he played, the more time he spent playing that center ice position. So I think he can do it. And if he can do it, it helps out the Blue Jackets because you've got a big body down the middle. It adds to your center depth. If he can do it successfully and be a good center in the NHL, then you've answered your question right there. That's how it helps the Blue Jackets. They have another good center. You have to have good centers in this league to be good. Adam Fantilli is going to be, you know, a very quality center in this league. It looks like. I think Boone Jenner has developed into a pretty quality center in the NHL as well, which is a great sign. But the more guys you can have playing quality hockey down the middle that aren't going to be liabilities defensively, et cetera, the better you're going to be. And thinking about it a little bit outside of the box, it helps the Blue Jackets in the sense that they have a glut of wingers. If Patrik Laine is not on the wing, that allows maybe another good player to slot in on the wing. So there's that for you. And it's a very long answer, but I think you have to consider all of those different dynamics to, you know, why Patrik Laine can help this team at center ice. It's an experiment. Don't get me wrong, but we got to see more of it. We got to see more of it because if it works out, it's going to be a boon for this team. They're going to have found a center that was already on the roster that they didn't know was there.
With them. Have you ever wanted to build the best fantasy team? Have you ever wanted to build the best business team? Because I'm sure it's a lot like that. And if you're a growing business, you need to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Indeed knows that finding people with the right skills makes all the difference when you're going to hire a team. Indeed knows the hiring needs to be cost-effective when you're running your own business. Indeed knows that when you're doing everything for your company, you can't afford to overspend on hiring. It just makes sense to use a company like Indeed, who's going to be looking out for your interests when you're building a great championship level team. So visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Well, I want to take a trip up 71 here and talk about the Monsters a little bit because obviously the Blue Jackets have had so many players, so many great players over the years come from that organization. And I know, again, it's very early for them this year, but which one of the Cleveland Monsters rookies or Cleveland Monsters long-timers, any of them, are you excited about? Maybe not expecting because we never know who gets pulled up and called down sometimes, but which Cleveland Monster is getting you excited right now?
Oh, man, that's a good question because I think it's the entire team. Like when have you seen a Monsters team that has this many actual Blue Jackets properties on it? This many actual quality prospects. It's usually a mix of a few prospects, a few guys that are kind of quad A players that are going to go back and forth between the AHL and the NHL, and then some AHL veterans that are there to, to make some money in the American League and be a good veteran on a team. The Monsters have a really interesting mix because they have some of those guys that'll go back and forth between the AHL and the NHL, and then pretty much the rest of the guys are tried and true young prospects. Guys that I'm excited to see this year, if I had to pick one guy, and this might be a little bit, again, outside of the box, Corson Ceulemans, because I feel like Corson Ceulemans is such a forgotten prospect in this organization, and he has a really intriguing toolkit. He has good size. He's a right shot defenseman, which I know it's not rare on the Blue Jackets right now. They have too many right shot D, but right shot defensemen are extra valuable in the NHL. He has offense to his game. He has a mean streak to his game. And he is a guy that he's like a ball of clay that you need to mold. Like, that's how everybody talked about him. Blue Jackets drafted him 25th overall in 2021. And he's a forgotten prospect because the Blue Jackets picked Kent Johnson and Cole Sillinger that year. People forget they had 3 first-round picks, and Corson Ceulemans was the final pick of those 3. He was a polarizing prospect when he was drafted. Like, people thought he could have gone higher than where the Blue Jackets got him. People thought he could have gone much lower than where the Blue Jackets drafted him. But he's a guy that for each of his 2 seasons at Wisconsin, mind you, they didn't have very good teams, but he was either the leading scorer or the second leading scorer on that team from the blue line as a freshman and sophomore. So I think that's pretty impressive. I think he has matured a lot in the course of the last year or so in terms of understanding, pro habits and what you need to do to take that next step. I talked with Rick Nash about that at the end of last year, and he echoed that. And I thought that myself just from my own conversations with Corson last year. But Rick Nash echoed that and thought the same thing, which is a great sign. So I'm really excited to see what Corson Ceulemans does in his first pro season. Well, I think we can just leave it at that. Like, like I said, he's a ball of clay. I have no idea what to expect from him, and that's why he's so exciting. But you look at some of the other guys on that team, like Stanislav Svozil is really exciting. See what he does on the blue line. Former 3rd-round pick by the Blue Jackets that now probably looks like he could have been a late 1st-round pick. James Malatesta, I think, is a guy that is so underrated as a Blue Jackets prospect that people, I'm not going to say he's so underrated that he's overrated, but he's so underrated that people have talked about him so much that I think he's more known than we might think. But he's there this year. Luca Del Bel Baluz is down there, a 2nd-round pick by the Blue Jackets in 2022. And just because they have so many players on that team right now, he hasn't played his first pro game yet. He hasn't slotted into the Monsters lineup, which I feel bad for him, to be completely honest with you, but it'll come at some point this season. They actually just loaned a few guys to the ECHL to Cincinnati. So hopefully some spots open up. But yeah, those are guys that I'm excited to see. Those are the rookies that I'm excited to see down there. Corson Ceulemans, Svozil, Luca Del Bel Baluz. But yeah, to go outside the box a little bit, I think Corson Ceulemans will be my pick just because we don't know what to expect from the guy. He made his pro debut last year, looked pretty good in some limited action with the Monsters. So we'll see what he has in store in year 2, his first full season as a pro.
I feel like having too many good young players is a really great problem for this organization to have.
Yes, it is.
Because I remember when they were like, well, we have 3 prospects total, and that's, kind of going too far the other way.
Yeah, I mean, think about a few years ago when we were talking about like Liam Foudy being the top prospect in the Blue Jackets organization when they didn't have much more behind Foudy. Now Foudy was waived and he's on another team and they've got, I don't know, like 10 or 12 guys that have a realistic shot of playing NHL games. We haven't even, Jordan Dumais, Denton Mateychuk aren't allowed to be in Cleveland. Otherwise, either one of those 2 guys might have been my answer to your question there.
Yeah, I kind of want to follow on from that with another prospect question. And this might be the same answer, but who's your favorite kind of under the radar CBJ prospect that doesn't necessarily play for the Monsters? Although I feel like almost all of our prospects are now on the Monsters.
All right, I'll go with 2 guys from this year's draft and 1 guy from last year's draft. The 2 guys that I'll go with from this year, you could really say anybody that from this year's draft because I think they got a lot of under the radar talent this year. But William Whitelaw, the Blue Jackets' third rounder, really excites me. I like Whitelaw a lot. He played in Youngstown last year. He's a guy that's maybe a little bit undersized as far as it goes with height, but everything anybody says about him is that it's kind of similar to Gavin Brindley. Everybody talks about how Gavin Brindley's undersized, but he's just so relentless. It's kind of the same thing with William Whitelaw. He's at Wisconsin this year, so I'm really excited to see what he does. He's had a pretty successful start to his season with the Badgers, so we'll see what he does in his first full year in college hockey. But last year, he was the leading scorer for Youngstown, who won the USHL. Wow, the three guys I'm actually going to talk about were all on that team. But Whitelaw, I really like Whitelaw. Blue Jackets' fourth-round pick, Andrew Strathman, who is back in Youngstown this year. He's a defenseman, and he's, at least through the first couple of weekends, he was the leading scorer among USHL defensemen. He's going to go to North Dakota. He's a guy that I'm really intrigued by. He similarly has that skill set, and I don't think it's a mistake that all of these guys have similar skill sets. Like, I think the Blue Jackets are drafting those two-way guys with skill and guys that aren't afraid to throw it around a little bit, and Strathman is one of those guys. And then the guy from 2022 that I'll talk about was a Youngstown Phantom last year. Now he's playing with the Penticton V's in Canada. That is James Fisher. And I bring up James Fisher. He was the 7th-round draft pick by the Blue Jackets in 2022. He has a really great story. He was at the draft in Montreal just because he's from the Boston area, and he just decided, hey, why not drive up? It'll be fun. If I get drafted, cool. If I don't, whatever. And so he was at the draft, stuck around until the 7th round, and the Blue Jackets picked him. He got drafted out of high school, so he didn't have, like junior hockey experience whatsoever, a very raw prospect. Then he went to Blue Jackets development camp last summer, 2 summers ago now. And you're talking about a development camp that had Kent Johnson, who had played NHL games, Kirill Marchenko, who was an established scorer in the KHL. Then you've got a guy who was literally playing high school hockey. So he looked out of place there. He didn't get to play a lot last season in Youngstown, but as a person off the ice, I love James Fisher. I think he's a great guy. Interviewed him for the Pipeline podcast that I do last year, and that's why he's a favorite underrated prospect of mine. And as far as it goes on the ice, he has had a great start to his year in Penticton. When we saw him at Blue Jackets development camp this year, I thought he looked like a completely different player. He's big, he's fast, he's meaner, he looks more confident. And now he's off to a great start with Penticton. I think he had 6 goals in the first 7 or so games. And then he's going to go to college after that. But he's somebody to monitor. Like, there's not a whole lot to say about James Fisher because he's another one of those lottery pick, let's see what happens guys. But I like him. I like the guy off the ice, and he's off to a stellar start this year. I think he's got a really unique skill set. He kind of has that Josh Anderson style where he's a big right shot guy who can be a little bit mean. He's fast, and obviously he can shoot the puck with 6 early goals. But just a guy to monitor there. There's a lot of prospects that I like. I really believe in this prospect group. But just some underrated later round guys there. And I had to throw in a 7th rounder for fun.
More in our conversation with Dylan Tyrer in just a moment. But first, I want to tell you guys about the Sleeper app. Because if you are looking to bring home some serious cash, it's a new NHL season, all sorts of possibilities. The Blue Jackets, while, they're probably not going to win the Stanley Cup this year, at least it's not looking like it so far, you can feel like you won the Stanley Cup by bringing home big winnings playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy hockey app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our #1 choice for daily fantasy sports, and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. A good player to take this week, probably Austin Matthews. He's always solid for a goal. Another guy that's been balling out this year is Jack Hughes. That guy lights the lantern. He is having quite the season over there with New Jersey. So all you have to do is pick one of those 2 studs. You'll record more or less than the Sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in any given game. So to win a $100 bet on Sleeper, You need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. So you heard me, Blue Jackets fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and location availability. Dylan, man, you've done a great job. I think we are already on our second Locked On Blue Jackets episode with you now. So
yeah, sorry, I'm
really
a little bit long-winded.
No, it's all good, man. That's a good thing for us to get 2 episodes out of one guy. But I'll leave you off with this one. Again, recording this one before the Montreal game. So the Blue Jackets, this take is either going to age perfectly or it's going to age horribly of yours. But what needs to happen, I guess. I'm not going to make you make a prediction on if the Blue Jackets will get into the playoffs or not. But what needs to happen to get the Blue Jackets into the playoffs this season?
Well, to get the Blue Jackets into the playoffs this season, I think it's probably simpler than we might think. I think they need to play the way that we've seen them play the last 3 games. That's playoff style hockey. That's going to get you there. That style is going to get you there. I'm going to say that. The players need to perform. Like Adam Fantilli, he's got to keep it up this season because the Blue Jackets need drivers like that, going back to drivers, whether it's Patrik Laine coming back healthy. Health is going to be a key, obviously. Like, I'm not going to talk about that because it's so obvious, but to make the playoffs, you got to be healthy. But the Blue Jackets need those drivers. They need those players, a couple of guys to take that next step and really turn into killers, right? And I think we're seeing Fantilli do that early in the season, which is really cool. Whether it's a guy like Alexander Texier taking another step, whether it's Kirill Marchenko taking that step. If guys are able to do that and those secondary pieces are able to really produce and, thrive in this playing style under Pascal Vincent, and those secondary players are able to support the big dogs like a Johnny Gaudreau or a Patrik Laine, then I think this team could be really, really dangerous. I think the blue line is very good right now. I think the depth of the defensive unit is good enough to be in the playoffs. The goaltending obviously has to be good, but like I kind of started with when you asked me about Elvis, I think the goaltending has been good enough to win this year. And if you're playing good enough to win, you're going to win. And if you win games, you're going to be in the playoffs in the NHL. So if the Blue Jackets keep playing the way that they have and they incrementally get better, and in that, I mean, some of those guys step up, I think they'll have a shot, right? Like, I think if the Blue Jackets play intense like we've seen, they'll have a shot. It's early, guys. It's early, but if they play that way, they'll have a shot.
All right, last hoop I'll make you jump through. Where can people find you on Twitter? Where can people find this Pipeline podcast you do, giving people all the knowledge on prospects in the CBJ organization? Where are we supposed to send these lovely fifth liners?
Yeah, you can follow me on X at Dylan Tyrer, DylanTyrer. I'm on Instagram too at Dylan M. Tyrer, I believe. And then the Pipeline podcast, wherever you get your podcast, just search CBJ Radio, subscribe there. We've just got a feed that has CBJ and 30, Monday Mailbag, Inside Edge, and the Pipeline podcast. All of our podcasts that we put out are on that feed, CBJ Radio. And, that's where you can find everything. If you follow me on X at Dylan Tyrer, you're going to get pretty much everything that I do, different clips from what we do in game, from what we do outside of games, prospect stuff, everything's there. But yeah, Pipeline podcast season 4 is underway. Gavin Brindley was our first guest of the season. And then next week we'll be talking with Hunter McCown. Next Wednesday is our new episode. Hunter McCown, another exciting Cleveland Monsters rookie, actually. So I chatted with him yesterday. Really good guy. It's a fun interview. He's an interesting character. An interesting start into hockey. He's from Northern California. Check it out. The Pipeline podcast presented by Ruoff Mortgage.
All right, Dylan, thanks so much for joining us today, man. We'll let you go get ready for the Habs game. All right.
All right. Thank you very much. It was nice talking to both of you.
And that's all that we have for our conversation with Dylan Tyrer. We will be sure to have him back on again in the near future as the Columbus Blue Jackets look to make some more W's in the win column. And they're going to have a chance tomorrow night when they host the Tampa Bay Lightning. So that'll be our episode tomorrow when you wake up, as we will have a conversation between Jay and I on what the Blue Jackets need to do to beat the Tampa Bay Lightning and get back in the win column, snap that 4-game losing streak. It's all coming for you guys tomorrow. Thank you so much for listening to today's Locked On Blue Jackets episode. For those looking to follow us, you can follow me on Twitter at HaydenH971. You can find Jay on Twitter at _JAKOBFORSTER. You can follow the show Locked On Blue Jackets at LO_Blue Jackets. It's been a late one per usual when we decide to record these things, so just bear with me here. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We're free right here on YouTube and the SiriusXM app. Hit subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. And until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.